Perfect. Let's get started. I know a lot of people are still joining, but I also want to get started with this about migration. Trying to make it as informal sessions about what is going on, what we're doing with migrations, and hopefully you get time to ask some questions. I will... Yes. So let's get started. And the chat is open, so if you have questions along, you can put in some comments there. The things I wanted to cover today is migrations, testing, and then we should have plenty of room for questions, and hopefully you have some good idea about where we need to improve and which abilities would make the tool more useful for you and what we need to address in the product development. I hope that was what you came from. I hope you all can hear me, so welcome. Please put something into the chat so I can see that one is working and you are here for it. So why migrate from SAP Cloud Integration to Hyperjack? Good. Perfect. Yes, thanks for joining. Why do you migrate? I think obviously it's the future platform for SAP, and if you have better answers or questions, please put them in to the chat also. I think that is some important aspects. Why it would make sense to migrate. Obviously, yeah, there's a lot of integration, especially if you're dealing with cloud integration or other types of integration, where it is a lot easier to use CPI or cloud integration and the integration suite with all the capabilities of it. I guess there's also something that in some cases the iPaaS platform will give you a lower cost of operation, making it easier for you to manage CPI. And there's probably still quite a number of features where the CPI platform is missing some functionality before it really makes sense to, on a large scale, migrate to it. But I guess you probably have your list of requirements. I definitely think a lot of in the B2B space. Obviously, if it's on-prem, I know there's going to be the integration cell that will solve some of those problems. But I guess that would also still take a little while before that comes in a major use case for it. So why do we want to automate the migration? I have some comments, and I think that is about creating consistent integration. It's about speeding up the process. I think a lot of companies would be using outsourced processes to deal with these things, and then say, okay, we now have these development processes that needs to go into or we have a fixed budget and a fixed number of hours, and if you need to do something more than that, you will go into get consultants to do the migration. That is obviously, or maybe a little more expensive than doing it yourself. But if they don't really have the capability or platform, it's just going to be a lot of challenges getting this involved and dealing with it. So yeah, it's about spending time or money on it, and it is about making the migration easier to make and make it easier to test. I heard someone talking about that the testing part was actually the most expensive part about doing the migration. So I hope we will be able to show you all of these different things and show you that automations, etc., makes a lot of sense in this perspective. And can everything be migrated? Possibly, but there's definitely places or things I would not migrate at the moment, but I guess you would also, once you'd be using the tool or will be in the process, you would figure out, okay, this really does not make sense to migrate. We might as well build this integration from scratch, because then we can leverage the cloud capabilities. We can make a lot of the processing capabilities easier. And in that perspective, yeah, you do not want to migrate, but maybe some of the assets resources created will help deliver some of these processing. Cool. Let's just start by introducing the Figaf tool. I know a lot of you already know what we have created of a tool, and I will not go into all the details about it, but we started out creating a test tool to manage SAP PI integrations, and then from there we just expanded and moved into governance, these part of transport processes with both PI and CPI and API management. The idea is that we fetch all data from the system, or all configuration development data, download that, have versions of it. Then we have testing tool with where we can create test cases for record replay in a matter of minutes. Run these. We have the option to create transports and document these on a high level. We have, or detailed level, we have a Git repository, and this is also quite helpful in the migration process, because that will simplify some of the processing that you would need to be doing. And then we have migration capabilities as well, both from between two PI systems, but also from PI to CPI. And that's what we will be covering today. And if you have questions along the way, put them into the chat. There will also be time at the end for questions, so that's what we'll cover here. Let's just take this one first. So, the history of the migration tool. Yes. I guess maybe almost 2 years ago I was asked by some customers, so what about PI to CPI migration? Will you support that? And for a long time I was considering what would be possible if it was something that we actually wanted to participate, or if it was actually something we could do in an amount of time, making it possible to participate, or something that would really be useful in this period of time. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not going to work, or it will be too complicated. Then SAP invited us to this Hack to Build, which was an event, or an event about creating a tool to it. And I thought, well, let's just join here for these 2 weeks, put our efforts in, and see if we could actually create something of value in this period of time. And I don't know, that was probably like 50% chance we could create something that worked and was useful, and 50% that it was waste, but at least then we had some idea about whether or not the feasibility of it. And we won the competition and thought we had a pretty good product in place, which meant it would be possible to actually build it. And we spent it's I guess there's one thing about creating something in a fixed prototype in a fixed landscape, and then there's something about building it for a greater audience and make sure that it runs on productive, well, not productive scenarios, but I guess all the legacy that you have put into your SAP PI PO systems over the course of a 15-year window. And I think there's a lot of strange things that goes into that. And how do we actually, will we be able to support most of this? In September, we got our first client to use it. And that obviously also cost a few bucks we needed to fix before they could use the tool. We've found a number of different bugs and improvements, and I guess that is what this is all about. Improving the tool and ensuring that it makes it faster for you to deliver integrations. And yeah, right now we have also some new development that are going on to make migrations easier and stuff like that. So how the migration works is that we already created agents that are connecting to your PI systems that are extracting all the data that is needed for this. Then we are creating a BPMN model internally in the tool. We will convert message mappings with all the artifacts that is required for it, whether function libraries, etc. If for communication channels, we have created XSLT to map these between the PI and the CPI model. We will upload all of this as a bundle into the CPI system, and then we can test the migration, then we can move this into production. So that's what I want to show to you today, how this works. So yeah, and it is pretty simple. So let me just get started here. So here we have the Figaf tool. As I said, it is, or maybe not said, it's a standalone application for a proof of concept. You can run it on your laptop. It does not require a lot of details to get started. It's just a Java runtime, and then it boots up. Yeah, we'll get into how you can try it out a little later and set it up, and it is quite simple. And what you then do is you connect it to the PI system and to the CPI system, fetch all the data from both systems, and then you have the repositories that you can use to develop on. From time to time, it still needs to fetch specific data for a given test because of some limitations. So you cannot work offline with the tool. It needs to be connected to the PI and CPI systems whenever it's running. But what we have here is let me see here, we have the iFlow. Let me just find the iFlow I want to be using. Here we have the iFlow, and this is on this SAP component. Let's see if I can actually show it in the CPI system. I'm not connected to it. I'm not connected to it, but we don't need that anyway. So here we have all the data for it. We can see the different versions we have made of this, so we can compare artifacts and see what was actually changed between two different versions. So not much happened there in this small iteration. So that's what we have. We have the objects in place. So the new thing is we will go into this repository. Here we will select the iFlow in charge, and we will select the ICO here for it. We will select a CPI system. We will select a package. I created one here for the webinar. And then we can put in the name of this. So now this is what we need for it. Then we can run a check to see, do we have all resources, are there any problems, etc. For this. And yeah, so one recent development is that, yeah, we will create an archive of all the artifacts that's actually needed. So if there's something that fails in the migration process, you can always send us this archive, and then we can run it and we can see what's wrong and fix the bug. So that's one of the newest innovations that will come out in the next patch. But the idea is here that we can have identified all the communication channels in it, and we have then defined these XSLTs that we want to use. And if we want to reuse something or change something, we can always go in and change this. And we can look at some of these XSLTs later, how to create them, depending on what you're mostly up to. What I can then do is we did the check to see if it's feasible. We can make a preview, and with this we can actually see what the iFlow would look like, Are there anything we need to consider, etc.? And obviously there is some challenges with printing the iFlow here versus printing it in the CPI iFlow, and we are targeting to make it better in the CPI, but it is difficult to get everything right once you are managing these things. So that was actually all we needed to do. So now we can select migrate, and this will then start the artifact in the background to handle the migration there. And then I can go to my CPI system. The webinar here. So we can see we created now one here for the webinar. I should have shown that this was empty before. So we created all of this. This is CGI, computer generated iFlows, as you know, the official abbreviation for it. And we can also see that we're getting a notification here. So update the HTTP endpoint, and we need to check that a given user exists for the connection. So we can just see here that this one has been added to a general iFlow, and that would not really work because there's limits in which UI you can create, and we haven't really found a good way that you can fetch the data or concatenate the data so it makes sense. So that's for this iFlow was all I needed to know. If we just look at this, one thing we can notice here is that this is a mapping with a user-defined library. And if we look at it, let me see if I can find it. I think we have a new field here. Here we have a simple UDF. This is a built-in one. So there's a difference between built-in one and so these are the ones that you in your PI system have in the message mapping. So if you didn't create the ICO VN, I don't understand. If you did not have the ICO in NetWeaver developers, or if you have an iFlow created in CPI or PI, it will generate an ICO in the backend, and that would be the one that we would be using. So that was the inline one, and I think maybe it's up here. Here we have these user-defined functions, and if we edit the script, we can see it has created a user-defined function to handle these things. And with that, you are migrating all the artifacts into one go, making it a lot easier to manage these things. And if you are making a change to this one, it is actually possible to, next time you are migrating something that links to that user-defined functions, so if you have user-defined functions, they would be updated here. If you make updates in the Figaf tool, you can apply that to all the different changes. One thing to do bear in mind is that we do not have the container element in this one. We could make a fix and use the built-in functions, but that would be a little challenging, or make it a little difficult to actually see what is being used. So if you are using containers, etc., you would need to update that in the scripts and make sure that it's improved. Mark, this was a graphical mapping in the PI or PO system that was migrated. Are graphical mappings generated from them? Yes. So we take the MPL payload, or whatever, the built-in payload of the message mapping, and then we convert it. We do some modifications to it so it matches the CPI, just as the CPI migration or import tool have done. but we do add the complexity with function libraries. We have also support for JCO or RFC lookup. And since there's JCO on the CPI system, you can actually just put in your user-defined function in that one, or use the RFC lookups. There's probably reasons not to, or I would probably recommend that you move away from them at some point in time, but for migration, that would greatly simplify the migration process to do that. Good. So now we have migrated it. We have an iFlow. We have made modifications to it. And what the onset changes? I didn't make any changes. Cancel. No. You want to continue? Yes. So I save as a version. I'll just make sure I got this one set correctly. Save as a version. So we now have version 0.1. And we deploy it. Now in the Figaf tool, I can then go here. Yes, UDF to group. Oh, let me just show you this in a bit. So here we have the archive, and if I go to the Git repository, so I think this makes a lot of the development a lot easier. That means that once you have made any changes to the iFlow, they will all be propagated to this Git repository. So now we can see we got this webinar with all the details here. So here we can see all the resources that was migrated. And if we look at this function invoice with mappings, we can see what is in this. And here we can see we have a normal UDF, the built-in one UDF, and it also up here, if I remember correctly, here has a link to this migration script, and we can then see the scripts here. And here we can see these UDF. So, and it is a lot easier to edit in IntelliJ or whatever you're using as an editor for these things, and all the data will just be propagated to this one, making it a lot easier for you to manage these things. And you saw the only thing I had to do was pull, and then I had everything here to develop this iFlow in. And we have the plugins that will allow you to just take one of the other ones that are already here. So we can, from here, we can deploy, or we can upload or download artifacts really simple without leaving the IDE, making it a lot easier to develop and enhance GUI script. And yeah, there's a lot of extra functionality, but that's not what I wanted to have here. So the next is we wanted to cover testing of this thing. So now we deployed it, we want to see how it behaves. So we will go to our CPI system here. We will find the invoice 3 integration objects, and we have here this ICO with some test data, and we can run it on the PI system just like this, and then we will send it in with the XI protocol, record it, and it will see how this is then being processed. Let's see. But that was not what I wanted to show today. Let's see what we get into. So what I can see here is I can select it here, and I can say up here migrate to iFlow. So the idea is that you go into your productive system, download a lot of data for this specific iFlow, and what you can then do is you can then say migrate to iFlow. You can create a new test suite where you're covering these things into. you would select which iFlow that is a part of this and which system. So we will find the iFlow here. We have the iFlow. It says it's not deployed, and we say proceed to migrate. And this will then take this iFlow and create a CPI iFlow of this one. So if we go to our test suites now, we have one here. And obviously some of this can simplify and be made a little more easy. And what we can see here is that we have an inbound message that we will be sending to the system with some data on, and we have all the outbound messages that is going on, and it knows which are the steps that it's supposed to be using for reaching these systems. So we can then select run on which system. We need to license it. And run again. And now on the last result, we can see how well it is going. We can see here on the status if the message has been sent, if there's any problem delivering this. And this goes out well, and obviously in the beginning there can be some problems setting up these things or ensuring that you have deployed the iFlow correctly or whatever. But yeah, this is to make it a little easier. Oh no, we're getting some errors. This is obviously something you want to check out. What type of errors is coming, what's important, what's not. And you can then go in and say, okay, we have the date here. That is not, we know that that's a field that is being, we can ignore because that is not of importance. And then we can see all the other attribute values. They are migrated correctly, and it works as we expected. And this makes it a lot easier because then we do not need to test the mappings, or we can see which part of the mapping we actually need to do anything with. And I've done a number of mappings, and I have no clue, or many of them I cannot remember why I did as I did a long time ago. And I think that's the same for a lot of you guys, or a lot of the things that you are managing. There is some legacy stuff into the migration that you do not have any clue about what is going on with. And this is that's why you want to have a copy, copy replay functionality to do it. So now I made an ignore list to it. What I can then do is just compare it again, and we can check if it is now successful. So now we have migrated an artifact, we have configured it, we have tested that it's correct, and everything in just a matter of minutes. Obviously, it is on a simple one, but it makes it a lot easier to understand what is going on. So that's the migration, the testing capabilities. And we also have support that if you, for instance, have not created this, the iFlow fully with the Figaf tool, you can also insert the different points where you want to be running the test on and figure out which of those is actually important. But our main idea was to make it so simple that you could set up all of this in an easy way. So what did I miss? I had told about the RFC, user-defined functions. Yeah. So yeah, that was the migration. Let's see here. So it's just about select the icon, press migrate, and then test, and then we saw the Git repository to see what you could actually do there with development and processing. We talked about these templates that you want to use to map the iFlows, and we created a Git repository where we've pushed in some of our templates. And the idea is that you have these, let's see here, HTTP sender how this is mapped, so we can see it's a style sheet version 2. We can see it has a figaf.blog, and this will then go into the BPM model. Here we have this is an SFTP name, and these are all the attributes, and we are also defining so here it just says update endpoints. If we had an HTTP receiver, we would also have set up external properties. So here we have added that it will take the external properties from an external value called host, and then it will fetch this host from the setup. So the idea is that you would go into, let me just show here in the diagram here, you have the integration flow here. So here you have these different type of blocks. If we search for the one that is of, so here we have, for instance, HTTPS block, and what we can then see here is the different components, what is defined here. And then the idea is to copy this one or create a template that matches what you want to do with this. Copy it from here, put it into your XSLT, create what are the external properties, and add notifications to the user to figure out how to deal with different things. Yeah. So with this, you can define all of these attributes to make it possible to manage DMS or whatever you need. But obviously, if you're using an on-premise DMS and want to migrate it, you need somehow to figure out how do we actually deliver this, and then set up the template so they matches that kind of a setup. We are trying with a simple pricing per IQ or receiver determination. So we also support dual stack objects, where instead of an IQ you would select a receiver determination. And this €100 include migration, test, transport, Git repository with the tool in a period of for the migration. And obviously we hope you would stay a little longer using the tool, because there is also a lot of capability in the transport functionality. If you want to try it out, we have we hosted a challenge a few weeks ago, and let me just copy this link into it. Copy link, where we showed you how to set up the tool to manage your SAP CPI, how to set up transport, how to set up testing, how to run a lot of these different things. This, I think, is a great resource, because it's one thing just to take it's pretty easy to set up once you get it running, but there's also something what the tool can do and how it can help make transport better, testing better. And we are also covering setting up the Git repository, setting up and how testing can be done. And we are also showing in the bonus section about this course about how to set up this setting. So I think the amount of session is 30 minutes on day 1, day 3 about testing if you want to learn a little more about that. Otherwise, go to the bonus section about setting up the migration tool, where I just show you how to set up these things with the different artifacts, and then you can see what is going on in that process. QA or missing features, something you think we should improve, or have questions or other things in the market that makes sense. I do recommend that you will check out this challenge and figure out if that is something for you. So yes, that was what I wanted to show about our migration for now. Any comments, questions, You can also raise your hand, then I can allow you to unmute if you want to be audible and ask your questions. You say, what about imported archive? I saw that one. They are not migrated yet. So in imported archive, you have two things. You have XSLTs and you have Groovy use Java mappings. We have added the XSLTs to the backlog. I don't think that will be too difficult to do. So hopefully that will be out within a short period of time. I think for the Java mappings, that is going to be a little more challenging. We could set up a Groovy front on top of this, possibly, and create some mock services that would allow you to take a Groovy functionality, pack everything into it, and map it. I'm not sure if that's going to be a good thing or not. And obviously it becomes a lot more complex if you have tons of compiled code that needs to be run. And especially if you do not have the source code for it. But I don't know. So obviously if it's XSLT, yes, well, if it's if you have the Java code, probably easier just to migrate it manually, insert it the places where we have it. The €100 does, well, it's includes support of the tool while you're using it, but once you move the iFlow into production, the support, well, you kind of have to use your own way of supporting this. You can obviously, by extending the Figaf tool and using the tool to extending the iFlow, or extending or transport and manage the tool separately. So that's what we wanted to do with it. But we can do something with our automated migration, but obviously there's probably going to be cases that we will not be covering. And once you have tested these things, obviously you would see what is possible for handling this. I don't think we have Java mappings in CPI. You do have the Groovy scripts, which could obviously be included in much the same way. Ravi, the adapters, they are converted using these XSLTs. So all the data from the adapter is converted into these. Thanks, Prasanna. I hope the video will be interesting. Yeah, so that is about setting up the. So we'll deliver some. You will define your own. Migrations at the time that you set it up, and obviously once you have completed the migration and have the iFlow, you can obviously make manual modifications to it. Obviously, modules could also be a place if we can find modules or replace them. That's also on the roadmap and figure out how to do it. So right now we have 2 clients that have tried the tool for some rather smaller projects. But yeah, it's not that it's not that old. But obviously we are scaling up, and I think we will see a lot more migrations going on. And yeah, we've improved the stability, making it a lot more simple. And you can do all adapters. And if there's some that we do not support, you just create your own XSLTs that translate these things. Obviously, if you have FTP file channels, you would need somehow to figure out this file on our local PI system. How do we actually connect this to the cloud? Do we set it up using some SFTP, FTP adapter to handle that. Cool. Anything I missed? That was a lot of good questions. Yeah, and obviously it's not that an old and mature product yet, but we're definitely working on it, making it, improving it, and the more customer feedback we're getting, the better we can make the tool, and the more time people would be able to save down the line with it. So, and definitely I still think that at the moment it is adding a lot of value with the UDF, with some of these other functions. Hi Abdul, thanks for joining. Other questions? We have tested it with, I think it was 7.11, maybe 7.1. So it takes all of this data, and yeah, so if you have dual stack ICO object, you just select the dual stack receiver determination, and then it figures out what to do itself with the data. There can be some functionality that is not supported on 7.1 or XI30 if you're on something like that. But I think, yeah, and yeah, so maybe some functionality would not work. We're obviously testing mostly on 7.5 and 7.4 with a dual stack system. So with the ABAP proxies, I guess that would be XI30 channels that would be added. I think when you're setting up something, for instance, if you have receiver determination, you can set up how to deal with these things. And I guess sometimes you would probably want the XI protocol to go to a standard flow and then a process direct, and you can also do that with the tool. And if you have on-premise connection that you're in the receiver adapter, you will just update your XSLTs to match those settings, so you have all of that in place really easy. I don't do much training on Groovy scripting, but I think if you take the challenge on day 5, we're talking about Git repository and debugging, and one of the things that we're going through there is actually create a PI test case or CPI test case, run it in the CPI system, and then take all of that data and create a unit test script for that. That means that you can actually go in and debug your Groovy scripts, and that makes it a lot easier to develop. Let's see if I can find anything on it. So let's see here. Faster, get customers here. So here we have a Groovy script for test data. And let me just find here scripts headers. So what you can do is, this is being downloaded, generated automatically, and then we just have a script here. We can just say run in debug mode, and with this, you're getting all of this setting up really simple. Let me just get this one. Implement methods. See if we can run it again. So here we can see we are inside of the iFlow, and we are editing these things ourselves. And we can see objects, we can make modifications, and this will make a lot of the JavaScripting a lot easier. So that's the challenge on day 5. The tool supports both Neo and Cloud Foundry. Can you throw a light Neo or CPI migration from PI? Which is best? Yeah, I think there's a lot of debate which platform you need to go through and what you have. I guess Neo you would anyway within the next couple of years need to migrate to Cloud Foundry. So if you're starting out from scratch, I would migrate to Cloud Foundry. I think the advantage with the Cloud Foundry is that you have the JCO. So if you have RC lookups in your mappings, they can be migrated really easy. And it's just a script that you set up into it. If you want to do hybrid or not, I guess that that all depends on yes. So I do have training on cpicourse.com where you can see what my training, but I'm not doing anything specifically for GroovyScript because I'm not that much into it. But I think this will greatly make it a lot easier for you to manage these things. Wow, good questions. Thanks. I hope I answered all of these. Yes, we are still here. More Q&A. If I just can show you the transport process. So now we made our iFlow and is done with the development. So let me just show you what we have here. So we can see based on our iFlow. I need to synchronize one more time, just a sec. Webinar. So this will then fetch the newest version. You can obviously also script it if you want to do that. What we can now see is that we have 2 versions of this, and we have a number of different options to compare iFlows. And this can be done both here or when you're doing transports. Then you can see what is actually different between 2 iFlows. And here we can see that the generated URL has been changed from one to another. So that we have already information about what's changed. We can also see if it is JavaScript objects that is being changed, what is being changed between two files. And we also have, for message mapping, we can also see what's different between the different message mappings we have. So that's for all CPI or PI object, we have this option. We can create a transport. Just put it into the same one. Migration. We can specify which landscape this is suited for. We set it up, we can link it to the Jira issue ID that we are using for this. It will just also request a license. And what we would then have now is we actually have an option to attach all the objects. And that means that once someone would be back into this change list, they can see all the tickets that has been involved in a given iFlow. We can select the test cases that we have for it. So we already created those. We can run the tests. Run the test on our system. So this way you can actually run all the iFlows that you have. and then you can start the transport process really simple. And here you have an option to define all the custom properties across the landscape, what they need to be. And then you can send it to approval. Someone can approve it, and you can approve it, and you can import it. So that means that you have all the governance in place for this, to handle this. So what the difference is between PIT and Figaf? So PIT works on the internal process, or works on data collected inside of an ICO. When we are creating PI test cases, we are doing it in the modules, which mean we can also do EDI conversions, testing on EDI messages instead like that. I think we have a number of ways to where the tool is improved in creating test cases on the PI stack. And then obviously we have, as you saw now with the transport functionality, this is the same you would also be using for a PI transport, where you can configure everything in just one screen and transport it. And that means that you do not need to document all of these things in separate folders or articles or stuff like that. Really simplifying the process. And then the PIT tool is just to test PI scenarios, but it cannot do migration. It cannot take your test cases and migrate it to the CPI. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap between the two in the testing suite or testing A area. I think we have and we can do more comparisons than the PIT can. So we have all the EDIFACT standards, JSON, that we can do comparison on also. Ravi, what are you asking with the migration tool? So this is the migration tool that we built inside of the Figaf suite. So all of this is included. Well, it's in this Figaf suite, and then it makes the migrations much faster. Other questions? Thank you. And yeah, so if you just want to see here, now we can go back, we can see on our QA system which artifact has been a part of this. When they were imported, who approved it, all these kind of things that you need from a proper governance perspective. Good. Any other questions? We still have 4 minutes. So 6 minutes. I hope you like this format. A little more informal, more questions, getting your inputs on what we are doing. And obviously, we will be improving the tool on a number of different areas over the next few months time, and to simplify some of the processing. But yeah, it can be a little challenging working with all the UI5 or BPMN modeling and layout. But it's been an interesting journey, and I definitely think it will serve a lot of great opportunities down the line. Okay, any other questions? Thank you for attending. I really appreciate you spending time with me here. So yeah, thank you. And I will stop the sharing if any questions. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Jitas.